Hi, everybody. As you know, and for those that don't, my name is Amy Bondar, and I'm a nutrition and vitality expert and eating psychology coach. And I'm so thrilled to be sharing this time with my friend, with my colleague, Julie Conlin. Julie, would you like to introduce yourself?
hmm Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I'm Julie Conlin. I am also here in Calgary with Amy, where Amy lives as well. And I am a Pilates and Melt Method instructor. And I primarily work with people who are kind of in their mid 40s and older. And I kind of specialize in working with people that have chronic pain as well.
Awesome. Well, and I'm so happy to sit with you. The reason my intention for wanting to have this conversation with you, Julie, is because, um, as like you, I have a lot of interest in working with people who are in midlife and who are in
Mhm.
transition. Usually,
Right.
women who are perimenopausal and menopausal, and even men who are in andropause, right, and going through the
hmm
same transitions
Right.
and or similar transitions. And so I've been listening to a lot of summits and doing a lot of my own education and learning in this area over the last year or two. And one of the themes that continued to come up was the importance of changing our exercise at this phase and stage of our life.
hmm
And I thought it was really interesting how almost all of the experts said the same thing, that intense movement, excessive exercise, over exercising, a lot of high intensity exercise can actually be very counterproductive to the body
Right.
and can actually maybe contribute to pain, to inflammation, to
hmm
excess
hmm
cortisol, to weight gain, and hormonal imbalance. So I really wanted to reach out to you because I really saw you showing up as an expert in the field of movement at this phase of life. And I was so fascinated. I was like, I got to ask some of these experts that I know and
Learn
have a
more.
conversation, because I know for me
Yeah.
personally, I love to exercise. I love movement. I've always done aerobics and higher intensity training. I am somebody that probably over pushes myself in exercise when I know, my intuition is telling me to cut back or pull back. So
Mhm.
I know that there's other people that are listening today that are probably curious about this topic too. So I would just love to hear from you and see what your opinion is on the subject.
hmm Well, it might be helpful to give you a little bit of a background on how I ended up in this field. And also understanding that it specifically wasn't triggered by menopause or, that stage of life. I actually ended up exploring Pilates in my 30s out of necessity because I had a really bad whiplash injury. I had a big ski fall in my mid 30s. I mean, I'm not an avid skier. I enjoyed skiing, but I had gone out and was just really intensely skiing this one time. My kids were home with my husband. I was out with my sister and my new stepbrothers because my dad had remarried. And I was trying to keep up with these stepbrothers of mine and went maybe a little too hard. I lost control. I cracked my helmet. So I actually ended up with a big crack in my helmet. And it was amazing I was even wearing one because that was back in the day when they were just introducing helmets. So I feel like that saved my life. So I'm a huge helmet advocate. But what that did was that injury actually led me down a path of pain that has been kind of ongoing for a very long time since then. And so it was through my journey of trying to find healing that I eventually, it was about 5 years after the accident, and I was going through physical therapy again, like 5 years later, and found Pilates, like private Pilates, where I was working on equipment, which now I have a whole studio full of all of that equipment. And I was just really fascinated by this new way of moving. And so now I've always been the type of person that is, I would say, just naturally active and busy. I love to dance. I was a dancer when I was younger, a Highland dancer. I'm always involved in a lot of things. I was a cheerleader in high school. I did do aerobics when I was younger, but I will confess that I don't love high intensity working. I don't like workouts like that are super high intensity. And it was just more just because my natural tendency is just to be someone who's always moving and on the go. But what I was really drawn to with Pilates was the mindful component of it. I loved that I was learning about how my body's intended to move and how I can really like think about things. I would go to my sessions and I would think about only what I was doing in that moment. It was just a really nice mental break from everything else that was going on in my life. And so that's sort of how my journey started. And I'm just the kind of person that loves to learn. So once I kind of, you know, find out about something new, I want to just jump right in. So I was about a year to a year and a half into learning about all this, where I actually had the opportunity to do a teacher training. And I did it more just for my own understanding, so I could learn more about what I was doing. And so it just kind of grew and evolved from there. And I just sort of became an instructor by default because I was so excited with all the things I was learning. I wanted to share more. So this wasn't like something I set out to intentionally do. And so because I come from a place of pain, of chronic pain, I feel like I'm able to really take my own experience and relate it to the people I'm working with. And now I want to tie back to the whole culture around high intensity working out and what is it that something like Pilates can be really helpful. It's that whole mind body connection. I think that it's really easy for those of us who have been really busy, like doing typical workouts, like high intensity workouts and spin classes and cardio driven workouts, to think that that's always what we got to do. But we can also check out, like when we're doing some of these high intensity things, we kind of go through the motions, but we're not necessarily in the motion. Does that make sense?
Totally. It's a
Yeah.
practice of presence. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think that's so important when we're working out. And I know for me personally, I love doing bar workouts, and it is also very similar in that, is that it just
Mm-hmm.
really brings your mindfulness to the practice, which is
Yeah.
so important, because you're right. So often we're working out, and we're not even with it in our body, which is the same with food. So often we eat and we're not even present with the eating
Exactly.
experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then our body goes in when we go into these high intensity bursts too. Our brain thinks that we're in fight and flight mode. So if all of a sudden we break into a really fast spin or a run or something like that, our brain doesn't really like know the difference between us running for fitness and us running away from a bear, or sensing that there's some kind of you know reason that we need to flee. And so that, I think, then is what triggers that whole cortisol response, and we go into that protection mode, right? And so our body doesn't necessarily we stay in that stress place,
Yeah.
rather than having a nice place of calm and control. And in Pilates, and even in, so I also teach the MELT method. This is my little bag of, and the logo, so just so that it looks kind of familiar. The MELT method is all about your fascial system and also your nervous system. Your nervous system lives within connective tissue, also known as fascia. And with MELT, we're actually working to help rehydrate the body. So as we get older, we get dehydrated in our fascial tissue. We start to feel really stiff and sore. And so with using, so in this little kit, I have little balls. They're soft little balls. And then I also have a foam roller that we use. That's nice and soft here. So this is my MELT roller. So it actually has, you can bend it in half. It's quite a bit softer and squishier than most rollers. And we work to stimulate the fascial tissue and pull hydration back in. And so when we do that, we actually calm our nervous system. So we bring our nervous system back into that parasympathetic restore phase, and it helps our body to stay calmer and even to be able to fall into sleep mode a little bit better. So I know a lot of people struggle in this stage of life with really poor sleep, which can just sort of facilitate this whole waking, cortisol. It's just a vicious cycle, right? And so things like Pilates, yoga, anything where we're kind of like just calming down, we're allowing our brain to be more connected to our physical body. Doing things like M.E.L.T, where we're actually taking time in M.E.L.T, we actually assess our body like throughout a little, when we're doing a M.E.L.T map or a class, we come back and we assess constantly. So you become very in tune with how your body feels. And you start to notice when you feel just maybe tightness in your body or fatigue, or if you're getting up to pee all the time in the night, you start to see all these other signs as leading you down this path of pain and inflammation. And you stop it before it happens. So that's kind of what I focus on with dealing with my clients, is just kind of bringing them back into their body.
Yeah, which is such an important practice. I really want to just go back to the cortisol conversation for a moment, because I think that's so important. And especially when we do hit our 40s, 50s and beyond, we don't realize how much stress we live with every day.
Right.
And it's not even just our day-to-day stresses of what we have to do in a day, but it's also our environmental stresses. It's also our electromagnetic stresses, right?
Yeah.
The toxins that we hold on to, the noise, all of those things can really make a difference to our whole stress response, our physiology. Yeah. And so many people at this phase of life really do struggle with weight and inflammation. Right. And so one of the most common things that we need to do, and especially that I focus on in my work, is how can we help to support the adrenal glands, and how can we help to turn down that stress response so that we can ultimately turn down weight, we can improve digestion, we can turn down inflammation, improve sleep, etc. And so when you were saying that often when we're doing this over exercising or a lot of high intensity exercise, big cardio bursts, etc., if we stay in that, from what I understand, if we stay in that for too long, that cortisol stays elevated, and cortisol will also elevate insulin. And the two of those hormones together are our fat storing hormones.
Right.
And so we think in our mind that, like, okay, well, if I work harder, if I burn harder, I'm burning more calories, I'm going to burn more body fat, for example. But actually, a lot of women and men too, it can be counterproductive. And a lot of people don't see weight loss by working out so hard, because they're just feeding into more and more cortisol secretion. And the adrenals become so fatigued. So a lot of people too, when we're doing that kind of workouts, if you feel really fatigued after, really burnt out, like you may just need a nap by mid-afternoon after you did that kind of a workout in the morning.
Exactly.
Those are all really important signs to say, whoa, okay, maybe this exercise isn't working for me like it maybe did back in my 30s, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so learning to adapt and change is so important. But yeah, that cortisol piece is so important, and we don't realize that we can overstimulate it with intense exercise as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do have a question though for you, and this is maybe something you can help to break a myth on. Can people lose weight doing the mindful exercises? Can we have lean, fit bodies by doing Pilates or yoga, as you mentioned? Maybe barre can be part of this family. Can you?
That's a bit of a loaded question, but it's one that a lot of people do come to me with. You know, I would not necessarily say that you're going to do Pilates specifically for weight loss. But in light of our conversation and the subject we just spoke about, what it can do is be a part of your whole story and a part of your whole journey, because we are being very mindful in how we move. We are allowing our body to de-stress. What you're going to find, and especially when my clients, majority of my clients, I don't just do Pilates with, we do Pilates and M.E.L.T. When you are actually tapping a little bit even more into that whole parasympathetic nervous system and allowing your body to kind of tap into that and heal while you're awake, then you're more likely to be able to fall into those nice deep sleep patterns. You're going to move out of that whole cortisol cycle. And then, so it's going to help facilitate that whole thing. And then what sometimes people will find is oh, all of a sudden I feel differently and the weight is starting to fall off a little quicker. I don't have to work so hard because I'm not so stressed. So it does kind of tie hand in hand, but I really want to challenge people to kind of get out of that whole exercise diet mentality, because I feel like that's what happens when people come and they say, can you help me to lose weight? And I'm like, well, this is part of that diet fitness culture that we grew up with that has really messed a lot of us up. And can we not shift what we're doing and let's start thinking about how can we listen to our body and start to move our body in a way that it was designed to move and help it to become stronger from the inside out, and so that we can get outside and go and enjoy the things we love to do. So I would say that Pilates and Melt are two tools that are intended to help you to live a better life. They're a tool. They're not like the only thing you do. So I hope
love
that's
that.
kind of helpful.
It is. It's absolutely helpful. And I think we really share a very similar philosophy, Julie, which we talk about often. But, I
Yeah.
often say we need to eat for wellness. We
Yes.
need to move for wellness.
Yes.
And weight, for example, is just a symptom of other things within the body or within our life that are out of balance.
Yeah,
And so when
exactly.
we correct those and awaken and strengthen that parasympathetic state, which we can do through movement, which we can do through meditation, which we can do through mindful eating, etc., then the body finds its rightful place, right?
Exactly.
What I was saying. So then the inflammation starts to lower. Then we start to digest and optimize our nutrient assimilation. Then we start to burn calorie more effectively. So I see what you're saying. It just ties so beautifully into the movement for wellness or eating for wellness. I love that. Yeah. It's so important because we have been ingrained with, calories in, calories out, the more no pain, no gain mentality.
Right, exactly.
Those are two toxic messages that we just know don't work and are so outdated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know within my community, I had told our friends that we were having a conversation, and somebody had posted a question that they would want to get some information.
For sure.
So I'm just going to pull it up here and read it and just see if you have an answer. So as we begin to get older, for some, arthritis begins to set in, but in random places of the body. Are there any nutritional or movement tips to help prevent or ease the tension and pain in elbows specifically? I have a mad case of tennis elbow / arthritis due to the nature of my work. So more natural preventative tips would be much appreciated. So if you want to hit on the movement, and then I can talk a little bit about the nutrition piece.
You betcha. So I'm going to tie into more a MELT perspective here in regards to pain and inflammation in the body. And so what I touched on a little bit earlier is that as we age and go through life, we become dehydrated in our cellular body. So I have people that come to me and they're like, but I drank water all day long. How can you say I'm dehydrated? And so what happens is that we may drink a good amount of water, but our body isn't necessarily absorbing that water. And so our fascia, or connective tissue, and our fascia, we're going to interchange those terms, is basically tissue it's everywhere in our body. It's under our skin, it's around our muscles, it's around the joints, it's in multiple layers, and it's kind of like a big three-dimensional web that actually is what holds our body together. So if we did not have fascia, our muscles would not be able to move our legs. Like, that's where force is transferred through, is our fascial system. And with repetitive movement, so things over and over and over again. So this person who has asked the question is finding that they have a repetitive movement, whatever that might be, that's causing tightness in their forearm. And so with that repetitive movement, you get a real deep dehydration of the tissue. And what happens when fascia gets dehydrated, it becomes like felt. And so where you might have had in its optimal state 80% fluid-based tissue, is now really dehydrated, and normally it would slide and glide just like silicone, right? Just really, really nice, smooth movement. And you'd be able to move your whole body. You think about little kids when they're rolling around and jump, they fall down, they jump right back up again. They've got bounce in their body. They seem to be like little rubber balls just bouncing all over the place. And we don't have that anymore. And so what we want to do is try and stimulate our tissue to pull up that fluid. I often have a sponge with me, and I meant to do that today and I completely forgot. A sponge that's completely hydrated and plump and fluffy, and then one that's old, the one that sits underneath your cabinet that you've used a long time ago. You pull it out and you can barely move it. So I think the plump and fluffy sponge is a child, and then the dried out one is like a 90-year-old you.
That's
and
a fabulous
so
analogy. I can picture that.
You can picture it, right? We know that old sponge. So what we want to do is take that old sponge and start dripping little bits of water in and start working that fluid into the tissue. And what's going to happen is, so we use in M.E.L.T, we use this little ball. And so we might even just take that ball and just glide it along the base of our hand, just to kind of work up or wake up the tissue. And then if we could also do this with your hand, like you could just rub your thumb along the heel of your hand. But what we do find is just like doing self-massage, it's not always as effective. But you could just kind of rub along the heel of your hand, and then just take your thumb and just kind of, I'm just going to stand up, and then just kind of into the thumb pad and just give it a little circle. And that's going to even help to try and get fluid. So with the ball, I just glide along the heel of a hand gently, and then just a little squeeze. And then this starts to actually, and I could even move my thumbs, it starts to bring fluid, I don't want to fall on the floor, into the tissue. And so what we're trying to do is actually pull fluid in, but then we want to get fluid moving, because we have all these sheaths of tissue that kind of go all the way up. And so I wonder if I can just move a couple things and tilt my camera down. I'm just going to show you down here. So then what I would do is I would just take the ball and I just rinse it up my arm. This is like little bits of a mini hand treatment that I would do. And so with that, you could, if you didn't have a ball, you would just move fluid up your arm, right? So you could do this with your hand with the little rubbing, circling, and then fluid moving. And what this does is it actually starts to get fluid coming into the tissue. And then in M.E.L.T, we also use a roller on our back to do the same kind of thing. And so what I find with my clients is that once they start to do a little bit of M.E.L.T every day, either on their hands, their feet, or their body, they slowly start to unstick all that dry, dehydrated fascia that's like felt, start to bring the fluid back into the whole collagen. That's where collagen lives, is in our fascia. Plump up all those collagen fibers, and then we start to feel like we can move again. We don't feel so stiff and rigid, and we get that pliability back. We get that spring in our step, and that is actually what starts to decompress our joints. So when we're really dehydrated and tight, we don't have that movement in our muscles. So then the joints get super compressed. And when the joints are compressed, then we have inflammation. So if we can release the tension and then release the pressure on the joints, then we stop having that pain. So I was actually really starting to get joint pain, like in here and a little bit in my feet, and it's all gone. I don't have that at all anymore. As long as I keep up with this. I say M.E.L.T is like flossing and brushing your teeth, right? You need to do a little bit every day so that you can continue being healthy and all over, right? Rather than just going.
Can you just use any ball, Julie? Can you use like a tennis ball, or like should you actually get a M.E.L.T ball? And if so, where do you get the roller and the M.E.L.T
Sure,
balls?
yeah. You want to use a ball that is soft and latex free. I don't really know where else to get them other than from me. I mean, I've had people use dollar store balls, but usually they're either too soft or too hard. The thing with fascia is that you don't want to go in really hard and fast. It's meant to protect your body. And so if you take something really hard, like a golf ball, I've had lots of people say they've been told to run a golf ball under their foot when they have plantar fasciitis, right? And you're just creating pain to try and get out of pain. And so we don't recommend that. You want to use something nice and soft. So if anybody is interested, I do sell melt balls. I have big kits and I have little smaller kits as well, and the foam rollers. And then I do teach classes and lessons and that sort of thing if it's something that you're interested in. But yeah, just try and find something that's soft and squishy. I've had a few people, I'm not sure which, is it a racquetball maybe? I think they're bigger than this.
Or a squash ball maybe.
Or a squash ball or something. You could always try something like that. Yeah.
What I thought was really interesting about the demonstration that you did, that you didn't go, for example, right to the tennis elbow. Like it was like a working up. So like the tennis elbow almost was like, again, a symptom of the other part of the fascia that's tight, right? So it's like you have to work yourself up through that way, or you're going through your back. And it's the same, again, if you're just using weight loss as an example, right? Yeah. But it's like a symptom of the other things that are out of balance within the body. So we have to go and correct the imbalances before weight can even really melt. Yeah. Right. So that's interesting.
So we refer to that as working indirectly before directly. Mm-hmm. There's another really interesting little analogy. So if you want to start thinking about pain as being your body is telling you something is wrong. And if you were to have a young child who maybe knew something had happened to their sibling and they just come running up to you and they're like, mommy, 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 I need you, I need you, I need you. And they're just right there in your face. What would you do? You would calm them down. Tell me what's going on. Let's go see what the problem is. You don't just smack them and tell them to shut up and get out of the way, right? But think about when we have a pain in our neck or a pain in our forearm, what do we want to do? We want to go and jab something in there, dig around to try and shut it up, and so we can move on. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a blunt way of explaining it, but boy, it's impactful, isn't it?
Absolutely. Oh, your analogies are awesome. Sponges and crying kids.
Sponges and crying kids.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So you want to really kind of think about what's going on in your body. Why is your forearm or your elbow feeling sore? It could be from overuse of your hand. It could be a posturing thing. You could be really dehydrated and tight and through the shoulders. Maybe your core doesn't know how to work well. Like there's just so many different things. And when I work with people, we take time to figure out what's going on and where is the problem actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just getting to the root is the wisdom and the healing, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So yeah.
I also really love what you said. To go back to this one question, but now some of the nutritional things that maybe what we can do for our
I'd love that.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting that you talk about water and hydration, because as a nutritionist, of course, I always talk about encouraging people to drink more water. But in this last year, my conversation has moved away from the quantity of water to the quality of water. And we often don't talk about what kind of water we're drinking. And so many people are drinking acidic, dead water. And acidity creates inflammation in the body. So one of the things at the core of inflammation in the body is having a very acidic body. And one of the ways that we can counter that is with mineral-rich water.
And how do we find that, Amy?
So here's the thing is that I personally have just invested back in September in a Kangen water machine. And Kangen water, I have an interview on my website and an article that I wrote, Change Your Water, Change Your Life. And Kangen water is a very easy machine that attaches to your faucet, and it gives you alkaline, antioxidant, living water. It puts your body back, or it puts your water back to the state in which it's naturally meant to be in. But it oxygenates, it mineralizes, it turns down free radical damage, and it really gives you living water. We call it snowflake water because when you see a water molecule in that state, it should look like a beautiful snowflake. But oftentimes our water, it's dead. There's no snowflake. There's no minerals in it. There's no alkalinity. There's no oxygenation. There's no antioxidants. And so we're drinking often 2 to 3 liters of water a day, but it's dead water. So we have to change the quality of our water. So you can look more into that.
Okay.
You can certainly reach out to me if you're interested in that. But I have shifted many clients over to that machine, and pain and inflammation has gone down. People often feel like they drink water and it's sloshy in their stomach, like they feel sort of bloated, or they drink a lot of water and then don't even feel like they've quenched their thirst.
Right.
That's because the water is not getting into the cells of our body. It's staying extracellularly versus going intracellularly.
Okay.
So the fascia, moving the fascia helps to hydrate, but what we're actually drinking is so important because we want to make sure that we're drinking water that actually gets into the cells and nourishes us. So that's really important.
So we've always used reverse osmosis water. Is that just pulling everything out of the water?
It is. So the great thing about reverse osmosis is that you've got super filtered clean water, which is awesome. But then you're left with no minerals because it does take all the minerals out. So unless you have a way to remineralize your water, a lot of our reverse osmosis water is very acidic. A lot of sparkling water is very acidic. A lot of obviously soft drinks and those designer waters, they're very acidic water. And so most people are walking around dehydrated, which really impacts how supple your body is, how supple your skin is, how supple your hair is. So it's a really important consideration. So change your water, change your life. Please go and read that.
I love that. Okay, I'm super curious.
The other thing is just mineralizing the body in other ways, right? So actually taking a multi-mineral supplement can be very helpful just to help lubricate the joints and lubricate the body. That's very simple. But of course, our quality of our food is really important too. And one of the things that most people are very deficient in is our good fats, right? And we know that our fats lubricate the joints, they hydrate us. And so, increasing more of our avocado, our extra virgin cold pressed olive oil, our coconut oil, our nuts, our seeds, our olives, hemp seeds, flax seeds, and really increasing. So we're eating up to, every body type is different, but you want to try to ensure you're aiming for about 4 small servings of good fats a day throughout the day to really help turn down that inflammation and get that lubrication and supple movement going.
Right.
And then, of course, we want all of our minerals and our antioxidants to come through our fresh, vibrant vegetables and our fruit, because antioxidants help to turn down inflammation.
Right.
So that's really important. And, on another side note, of course, there's always things that we shouldn't be eating for health and wellness. But specifically for arthritis, I always encourage people to be very mindful of the nightshade family. So not everybody is sensitive to the nightshades, but the nightshades is a family of vegetables and spices. So it's our eggplant, white potato, all bell peppers, and tomato. And a lot of people eat those vegetables, right? And it's the skin of those vegetables are very hard to break down, and they can trigger pain and inflammation for some people. And then it's the spices, anything hot and spicy like paprika, chili peppers, cayenne, a lot of people using hot sauces and whatnot. That can absolutely also trigger pain and inflammation. So that is definitely a family of family of food that we could take a look at as a possible trial elimination, just to see if that makes a difference to take down some of the pain in the body. But I've seen amazing results when people change their water, up their fats, up their greens and antioxidants within their foods. And there's so many others to list, from teas and spices, and then taking out the nightshades. That can be a game changer in helping improve arthritis.
Okay. So what about just in general for people in this perimenopause and menopause stage of life that are kind of struggling with that weight gain in through the middle? And what would you say some of the common things that people are maybe doing wrong that, and maybe a recommendation of what they might be able to shift to help bring their body more into a natural metabolic state and a healthier weight place for them?
Yeah, great question. I don't think it's anything we're necessarily doing wrong when we talk about why all of a sudden this mid weight gain happens. It's what
Okay.
we're not aware of.
Right.
So at this stage of life, it's so important to detoxify the body. At this phase and stage, the liver has become stagnant and
Right.
stuck. And the more we lack in detoxification and the more toxic load we have in our body, the harder it is to lose weight. So many people will try exercising, they'll do all sorts of different nutritional programs and diets out there, try so many different supplements to try to shift that belly fat. But one of the biggest reasons why it doesn't shift is because the body needs to go through detoxification.
Okay.
And so, that's why I run my 30-day spring detox program, and, just doing general detoxification with clients when I'm working one-on-one, because toxins or fat gets stored, toxins get stored in fat cells, and that's really important. And so until those toxins are eliminated, it's really hard for the body to shed weight. So that's important. And we can use essential oils and lots of different nutritional strategies to get good detoxification. And the second thing, going back to our conversation about cortisol and stress, I do a lot of work with my nutritional clients about really not only resolving our stresses in our day, but really taking a look at how do we bring in adaptogens into our lifestyle? How do we use superfoods to help us be more resilient and counter our stress? So what's interesting and what's so important is that we have to, and oftentimes we're past this point, but it's really in our mid 30s when we have to start managing our cortisol. But we wait, and we wait too long.
Yeah.
And then in our 40s, we start to see our body shift. By 45, it's like, oh my God, things are really shifting. And then once we hit 50, 55, women and men have so much trouble with that midsection belly.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's because we haven't managed our stress well over the years. And so at this phase, it's so important to do whatever we can to counter our stress. And so specifically with food, this is where I would really make sure our blood sugars are stabilized. This is where intermittent fasting can become very, very helpful in this phase of life, but also adding in those superfoods that are adaptogens that allow us to be more resilient and counter our day-to-day stresses, which could be things like medicinal mushrooms. Adding a couple teaspoons to a smoothie can help. Using maca. Maca is an amazing endocrine regulator, and it's so good to help us manage our stress. So those two, adding ashwagandha and rhodiola into our lifestyle. So there's many different superfoods that we can integrate, but what they ultimately do is help to nourish those adrenals that have become so fatigued over the years, and help to get the cortisol stabilized, the insulin stabilized, so that then, as you say, we can awaken and strengthen that parasympathetic state, so that then the body can start to release and shed that weight.
Exactly.
So those are two big strategies that I would use just to help support in that phase. Because at this time, like Julie, so many people have been around the block. They've tried so many different programs and nothing works. And again, it's because we haven't gotten to the root cause of why that weight has shown up in the first place.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course, alcohol and sugar and all those things can be talked about, right? But at the core, there's some bigger things going on that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a lot of really amazing information we've covered today.
I think so. We'll have to do it again because there's so much. And and I do think what's wonderful is just that, again, integrating what we've talked about, not only from a place of movement, but a place of exercise, of eating well, is that it is about wellness, right? Where so often we go for the weight loss is the goal for what we're trying to achieve, but we have to kind of go in it through the back door.
And talk about wellness. Can you very quickly, before we wrap up, do you think you could share a little bit about you're in the middle of a 30-day challenge, and then you're starting another one, I think, for people who missed the first one.
Yeah,
Is that
actually,
correct?
well, May 1st, it's starting Saturday. So
Right, it's
yeah,
coming
so
up on Saturday.
we've just finished our first 30 days, and so now because people were just having such great results, inflammation was going down, people were sleeping better, weight shifted, and just feeling energetic and feeling better. So it's like, you know what? It's still spring. Let's keep going for another 30 days. But
So tell us a little bit about what that challenge is.
okay, so it's what it is, 30-day, it's eliminate and illuminate. And so the whole idea is to eliminate our toxins at spring, because it's the most important time to detoxify, so that we can feel energized and illuminated. And what I do is that every day I send you a tip, a nutritional tip, a recipe, a meal suggestion that will help to optimize your health and help you to detox using the power of foods. I also use an app called Eat, which is a mindful eating app. And you get to share your pictures of your food with me, and you get to see what I'm eating. And then I can give you feedback in real time of how you can tweak. Maybe your food is looking awesome. I can give you feedback on that. But it just gives you that accountability and that daily coaching to help you feel successful and on path. And then we do a private Facebook group so people can share and encourage each other. And we also check in once a week via Zoom,
Oh,
just to
wonderful.
track our successes and set our intentions. So it's a wonderful program that by the end of the 30 days, simply put, you just feel awesome. And
I
that's
love
really
it.
what it is. So we are just at a few days away here from kicking off. So if any of our listeners are interested, you can certainly get in touch with me or go to my website, amybondar.com. But if you've missed this round, don't worry. There's always personal support, one-on-one support.
Yeah.
And for you too, Julie, let us know how we can find you.
Yeah, so my website is pilateswithjulie.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Pilates with Julie YYC, and also on Facebook. I have a group called Midlife and Beyond Pain-Free Movers. And so that's just a really great, safe place where I share some little tips on movement, about Pilates, and a little bit about M.E.L.T, and where you can come and ask questions, and then just find a place of support, because we're all kind of in this together. Once you realize when you're in these groups is that there's a lot of people that are feeling exactly the same, and you just don't feel alone anymore. And that is one step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, Julie. And yes, you actually inspired me to create my own group as well. So that's where the Nutrition and Vitality group has shown up. So thank you. Coaches helping each other and guiding each other in this social media world, which can be a little bit insane sometimes. But it is nice to connect with people that you can trust. And so for my listeners, I absolutely trust Julie in this area, as she's an expert for sure. And so I thank you for sharing some of your expertise with us today, and we'll have to do it again.
Thank you. And I feel the same about you too, Amy. And I know we haven't worked a ton together, but I have done your retreat and one of your 30-day challenges. And this one sounds just like maybe what I need to do right now to get myself on track. So I'll be in touch about Saturday. I'm excited I was looking at that already. So I'm excited to learn more. And if anyone's interested in joining me, get in touch with Amy and we can do this together.
It's fun in numbers, right? It is really just a fun program. We have a great time doing it. And the group collective is so nice. And you hit it, Julie. We often feel alone, but there's collective struggles. And when you can find that group to support you along the way, then it just makes this feel so doable.
Yeah.
So well, listen, I'd love to have you, and we'll do this again, and perhaps we'll do a live call with some listeners down the road as well, so people can ask us some questions in real time.
All right.
That sounds thanks, really good. Julie.
All right. Thanks, Amy.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.